Let me just kick things off here with terms of questions. I have a couple that I'd like to throw out there, and thank you, by the way, for the demo. The first one is, I visited a customer about a month ago, and they were complaining, I won't say what brand they had, but they were complaining about the discovery tools that they were using. They said, we've got a very fat agent here. It takes a lot of labor to maintain this thing. So what would you tell them then in regard to the asset core? How would you respond then? Why should they switch and move to asset core?
Sure. So the discovery that I showed you is very lightweight and agent-less. The discovery piece is all configured. You can isolate perhaps just a scan against my Linux servers from a Linux device, a scan against my infrastructure. Very targeted, less, and what it typically returns is the high-level pieces of information with regards to the MAC address, the IP address, the OS, the bit level, and how it's connected to other assets within your environment. We then typically recommend that you deploy our agent to gather the additional discovery data, like your hardware and your software. But as I mentioned, it's never really utilizing more than 20 megs in memory. And we're able to do this because all the modules already exist, but we don't load them until we use them, and then we unload them. We also are very lean because we're doing so in real time and working off of deltas or changes versus having to scan the entire device every time, which is another paradigm, and return all that data back to the server only to find out that one or two things changed. So the fact that we work on changes, the fact that we load and unload things in real time on the endpoint, when you install an application, your cursor turns into an hourglass, it's moving end over end, and when it's done, I guarantee you did not notice the nanoseconds or milliseconds that my product took to record the fact that there's a new piece of software. If maybe 5K worth of data changes occur in any given day, and we're set back using 10% of your network's bandwidth, your network folks won't see it, your end user won't see it, nor will the server folks see any kind of hit against their server because it's all happening over time, over schedules that you've identified, leveraging, of course, those transfer windows. That's a great question. Okay,
so it sounds like it's a small agent when you do use an agent, and it's very fast. So that's great. The other thing I wanted to ask about is the integration, and I know you didn't get a chance to show the integration between Asset Core and Service Core, but I think that there's also some integration planned for other BMC products like Remedy Force. Is that the case?
That is correct. The whichever release, what are we in, spring, summer, has the first layer of integration with Remedy Force, and that you'll be able to pull the discovered and inventoried asset data from our Asset Core directly into Remedy Force. From a Service Core side, as you can see here, of course, it's the same product set, so the integration is initially going to be stronger. And essentially what that looks like is from an incident, you have the power and capability, as I mentioned, of looking up a user. Once we find the user, we look up their assets. And again, that's the level of integration that we would expect, I think. But what we then do is take the asset data we've collected, and directly from the product, we're able to perform what we call these advanced actions, which are any rule I've created within my product. So if we give this just a second, I can see, there's some help desk fixes. You want to back up the user's profile, or kick off an antivirus, or clear the browser's cache, or maybe they want a piece of software deployed. I can install Thunderbird, or I can map a drive, or Reader, or Firefox. So with a simple button click, those actions get queued. If there's an approval process, they get fired, and then we're able to remediate that and report the history of the ticket. So the integration, and that includes your remote control aspects, the direct access aspects, and the ability to do things like rebooting and shutting down. And you're going to see each version of Remedy Force adding more and more of that functionality in the very near future.
Wow, that's pretty cool. We have some other questions that have come in, so why don't you go ahead? I think it's probably just easy if you could go ahead and just read the question then, and then answer it. Okay.
Yep. So we have a question that says, "Does the software discovery hardware access subnets?" So, you know, I believe the answer is yes. I mean, to me, these are subnets. Where we'll understand the IPs and how they exist, and if there's more than one in the Class A, Class B, Class C, we are able to drill down into those, as you can see here. And this is an actionable menu as well. So, and I can't find the one that has more than one, of course. But if, there we go. So now we have multiples, and I can drill down into these, on them, and then from here I can manage home action against that device. Now, we are not a BB NA. We are not doing network device configurations of any kind. We are simply doing configurations on your desktops, laptops, and your servers, as well as your mobile devices here. Next question, can FootPrints asset do with discovery? So, yes, we can. When I do the IP-based scan, if I check a box to say do a deep dive hardware, deep dive software, I can also return all that data. But, you know, Dick, like you mentioned, some customers don't want that much. You know, that means every time I run a scan, there's more processing going on the endpoint. There's more data reconciliation done on the back end to understand what changed, which also means greater network traffic. Often we find for static environments that don't change very often, maybe that makes more sense, especially maybe some servers you don't want agents on your servers and you're not using me for server management, but you do want me in your inventory, and once a year, once a month, once a quarter, you want to run an agentless scan on those devices, whereas on your clients, your laptops, and your desktops, maybe it makes sense to put that more efficient agent down, and we can do that. Hardware inventory. Does it recognize and provide info on connected peripherals such as USB scanners? And yes, actually it does. I failed to mention that. But not only does it detect your peripherals, if we drill down into a device here, it's a whole section around peripherals, whether it's a pointing device, a printer, a scanner, a phone, whatever's connected at the time. We also have a compliance aspect here where I can control the peripherals. I can restrict or allow any type of device. So I can authorize or deauthorize, and I can do so based on filter conditions. Like I had a customer that said, we only allow USB keys to be utilized if it's encrypted, and if they're all of a brand that we call Iron Key. So I was able to authorize Iron Keys and deauthorize everybody else, and that prevented anybody with a non-encrypted USB device from plugging into their systems. So you can do so, you know, very, very distinctly here, and it's a very strong feature that we have. Other aspects of that module include disabling your Wi-Fi, turning off the burning service. It's really about controlling data. Financial institutions use this quite heavily. Secure environments, you know, the financial area of a private company may enable that type of functionality, again, to ensure your data doesn't walk away on you. How does the software scan work on Linux and Unix? Are results similar to the Windows? So yeah, so, you know, PKGs, RPMs, whatever they happen to be, we find. If I drill down here and I look at managed systems, device type, OS, let's see, Linux, OS. So, you know, it's a subset of the information because it doesn't all apply to a Linux device, excuse me. We are able to obtain it. I think this one was done agentlessly, by the way, and I can tell because it's orange. Orange means I did a scan versus putting my agent down in the device. I was able to pull all the RPMs, which you can see here as well. And they're some security data we can get, and any of the compliance stuff would also apply. We can also, of course, do your deployments to it from a software perspective, and do some other operations. And we have a matrix on our website of what we're able to do and not do against the varying device types. Let's see here. Software license. Can there be multiple licenses for one product, different departments, many requests? Yes, there can. So I go back into my application management section, go to my software license management area. Let's take maybe, I don't know, Visio here, 2010. So I actually happen to have here 2 distinct purchases with different, of course, serial numbers and quantities, different levels of information, and you can evaluate these against different departments, which I may or may not have done here. So here's my Windows 7 devices, but I could evaluate against, I could go into my AD Forest and pull ZOUs. I can also manually create device groups, engineering, finance, etc., and add multiples of these, and distinctly then authorize particular departments or not, or people within those departments to get the reporting that I need. Remote control, multiple monitor, yes, and I did mention that, but I am going extremely fast, so not a problem here to reiterate. When you remote control a device, the toolbar that pops up on the screen will actually have a button that represents each monitor. So 1, 2, 3. If you have 5 monitors, you'll have 6 buttons. 1 with each numerical number representing the monitor itself, and then a 6th with the left-right arrow indicating that I can kind of sweep my cursor to the right or to the left to be able to manage and see all the monitors at once. It's all based on what you choose to do. Along that same line, we also have a monitor inventory, which is kind of unique. We can interrogate and discover, I'd say 80% of the time, the make, model, and service tag of the monitors itself, which can be valuable as well. How do you decommission an asset? Great question. So I forgot to talk about the financial aspect. So if we look here at the financials for this particular device, this is where you can see its life cycle. And when you talk about a life cycle, you define its life cycle, on order, received, in stock, deployed, etc. Some things can trigger changes like imports. So when I import it, it might always show on order. Someday when we get the Magic Wand integration, that might flip it over received. And then, of course, when we find it out in the wild based on our discovery, it might flip it over to deployed. I can take things out of stock, put them back in, and inevitably retire that asset. We keep track of all the dates that are relevant. On a scheduled interval, we'll recalculate time until end of service and provide you with alert conditions, letting you know when and if you need to refresh particular assets. As I stated, we also do the financial capability down here, the purchase and the lease. What type of depreciation type you have, what's the duration, and we allow you to attach additional devices or software to understand the roll-up cost based on the depreciation and the time in service. So it's all managed here. Now retiring is one level, but we also have what we call deprecating an asset. Now this is my server, so it's not letting me. Very smart. But if I take an asset like this one here, I can choose to. I'm not a manager. Deprecate that device, which basically means that it's going to gray that device out. I will no longer be able to manage that device. It will ask me if I want to remove the agent from that device if it's still on, and it frees up your license within my product. It will free up the software licenses associated with that asset and put them back into stock. And it will provide you then with historical reporting from an audit perspective against that device for whatever time period you have based on your data retention policy. How can I access through the web URL? So there's a series of kiosks where if I want to pull up this from any machine, here's where we have Java Web Start. If I click this button, it's going to launch that console in memory. I can also come out here to do a local install based on my operating system if I wanted to be able to launch it from a shortcut like I did prior to the demonstration.